Do you believe children should be allowed to watch horror movies?
No, absolutely not.
Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or harm. This is what directors of horror movies use to entice their audiences. So, what components make up a good horror movie? Well, horror movies can be classified into three categories, being supernatural, scientific, and naturalistic. And although each category is not strictly defined from one another, they each have their own defining features. For instance, most horror movies fall under the category supernatural, which is what most people believe to be true horror. This combination of aspects from both horror and supernatural films typically share the characteristics of containing more gruesome and vivid violence centered around a monster, such as a demon, ghost, or vampires, and have elements of religion such as afterlife and demonic possession. Movies like this can be The Exorcist, The Ring, and The Omen. While scientific horror movies typically see humans creating or discovering something, creatures that have never been imagined or seen.
It was dead.
Other times, these creatures may not have been made by man, but instead exist outside of human awareness until the species happen to run into each other. Movies like Alien, A Quiet Place, and Under the Skin all share characteristics of scientific horror movies. In the last category, naturalistic. These movies include the monsters of the real world, such as serial killers and psycho murderers, often taking inspiration from real-life atrocities. These movies can also feature animals that have grown above the average size, like reptiles or bears, or a group of animals like spiders or wolves. Some examples of this are Orphan and Scream, or Jaws and Cujo. As proposed by Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, the human mind can be divided into 13 categories or archetypes. But nobly among them is the shadow, the part of ourselves that keeps our darkest, deepest desires and urges suppressed. Once someone begins to determine what is accepted and what is shunned in society, it serves as a barrier between our primal instincts and supposed normality. Although nothing has been proven yet, it can be hypothesized that watching horror movies or being exposed to creepy content could help to quench the urges of the shadow archetype. If implemented from a young age, there's a possibility that this could result in not only a more healthy child, but of a more self-aware adult. However, it is hard to say whether these things could be true or not. But what is known is the undeniable correlation between the shadow archetype and the impact of horror. But what exactly is horror? Media that plays off her fears? Something that initiates a shock factor and possibly leaves us stunned and disturbed. The same way the meaning of a poem can be lost in translation, horror movies are given too firm of a structure. Not all horror has to consist of jump scares and screams. It could be something else entirely and still poke out our fears and shock us. Take a look at the story Coraline, for example. When the beloved children's book was initially set to be adapted into film, Neil Gaiman spoke bravely about his take on children and their perception of fear. He said, "Children react to the story fundamentally as an adventure. They may get a little bit scared, but it's an edge of the seat, what's going to happen next, oh scary thing, because you're giving them a story about somebody like themselves." Gaiman proceeds to claim that he believes adults are more disturbed with the story than children are, asserting that the story of a young girl being put into danger is what frightens parents who fear for their own child's safety. Although this claim cannot be directly backed by scientific evidence, there is some truth in what he said. Coraline went on to rank third in the box office, making $16.85 million within its first weekend. The film's success just goes to show that horror can be interpreted in different ways. That a brooding kind of creepy, incorporated with action and adventure, can excite and enchant in the same way the spine-tingling thriller could linger in your mind for days after watching. Surely there has to be some great big consequence to stop parents from letting their children watch horror movies. Some catastrophic impact that can change their lives forever or greatly alter their development. What is the true reason why horror movies may harm children?
I'm more apt to probably be okay with my own kids watching stuff that they probably shouldn't watch at their age, because it just, I always kind of understood it's a movie, it's a TV show, or whatever it was, and it's not real. Unfortunately, probably there's people who don't necessarily know that sometimes, especially if they're really young.
The factor that differs the experience of a child watching a horror movie from that of an adult is that children have a different perception of reality and fantasy. According to the Woody and Wellman study, by the age of 3, children are already capable of making some distinctions, such as understanding the difference between a toy and what it represents. For this reason, one could wonder if it's even the movie that's causing the child the most harm, or if it's the environment. Children are easily convinced to believe in fantastical creatures or beings, such as Santa Claus. This is not due to the fact they see his red sleigh flying through the sky in movies, or his jolly face on postcards. This is because they are encouraged to believe he exists.
The prince was led into a world of strange and beautiful magic. Wow.
The Last Unicorn by Samantha Darko. There was once a unicorn named Daria.
A family sitting down to watch a scary movie would not try to convince their child that what is in the movie is real. In fact, they would most likely make attempts to prove that it is all fantasy.
I'm more along the lines of, making sure they understand these things aren't real. They're movies, they're made for entertainment.
On a deeper level, humans are born with the fundamental fears or aversions, ones meant for survival. These include pain, isolation, sudden movement, the unknown, disease, incapacitation, falling, and suffocation. These are ingrained in the minds of all humans because they are associated with death. Any fears developed thereafter are only developed because they somehow were associated with these innate fears. Imagine a spider's web, where at the center is death. Death is the end of all. It is what takes everything we know and extinguishes it like a candle flame. It is only natural that fear, something that exists to keep us alive, would exist to caution death. When someone is exposed to something that triggers an innate fear, such as pain, it will take its place on the spider's web. Although this newly developed fear will most likely not be as detrimental as the impact of pain, it will still be remembered as something, if only distantly, related to death. Horror is all around us, and is a feature of life. And although for decades, children haven't been exposed to horror movies, the 21st century has done changes in the norms of many different issues. And with news stores and technology, it's becoming easier for children to be exposed to darker content. So, based on the evidence provided, it is your choice to whether you think children should be allowed to watch these films. We implore you to do your own research before traumatizing any children.
What's your deepest fear?
Probably say it's the dark.
Being alone. Sharks or a bear.
Getting bad grades.
Elevators. Probably death.
Straight people.
The dark.
Being alive.
Stepping in mud with my Yeezys on.
Gas mask.
Scared of storage facilities and lines that aren't straight. And I don't like mannequins, and I'm scared of the Kool-Aid Man.
The ocean.
White guys.
My math teacher.
Gluten allergies.
Loneliness.
My family getting murdered right before my eyes.
My deepest fear is that something would happen to my daughter. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we had to take out a part of our interview with our good friend Emerson Jacobson. As a bonus and a token to her, here you go. Okay. So is it correct that you have never watched a horror movie?
Wait, I'm gonna put this in my pocket. Wait, what was the question?
Do you like Teletubbies? Did you like Teletubbies as a child? Why and how do you feel about them now?
I do not understand why this is part of the documentary because Teletubbies were not a horror
Just answer the
movie.
question.
They were a children's
Answer the
show.
question.
Excuse me, I'm talking. I'm doing my response, so you can. I hate you guys. You guys are so mean to me.
I'm sorry, I was recording, so like we didn't want to ruin it. You gonna leave it running now?
Can I throw it at you?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you catch it? Are you
Yeah, I'll
sure?
catch it. I'll try. I don't trust myself, but do it.
Okay.
Bye, Miss Poole.
You too.
Okay. Got it? So now that we know how fear works in adults, how do you think fear would work for someone who has never seen a horror movie before?
Oh my god! No! What are you doing?